In a small American town where everyone seemed to know everyone, Daniel's life revolved around grease, engines, and late nights in his tiny repair shop. The shop wasn't fancy, just a weathered building with peeling paint, a rusty old sign, and the comforting smell of oil and rubber. To Daniel, though, it was his whole world. He had inherited the garage from his father and was determined to keep it alive, even if that meant working 7 days a week. Life had not been easy. Business was slow, and bills piled up on his workbench like spare parts waiting to be used. Sometimes he wondered if he should close the shop altogether, but the thought of letting go of his father's legacy always stopped him. So, every morning, he pulled on his worn-out boots, rolled up his sleeves, and kept working. One quiet afternoon, while Daniel was bent over a pickup truck's engine, the shop door creaked open. Expecting a customer, he wiped his hands on a rag and looked up, only to see a little girl, no older than 8, standing in the doorway. She had bright eyes, curly hair tied in a ribbon, and in her small hands she clutched a pink piggy bank. Daniel blinked in surprise. "Hey there, kiddo," he said gently. "You lost?" The little girl shook her head firmly and stepped closer. "No, sir. I came here because I need your help." Intrigued, Daniel knelt down to her level. "Well, I fix cars and bikes. Is that what you need help with?" She shook her head again. "Not a car. My mum's heart. It's broken." Daniel froze, unsure if he had heard her right. The little girl hugged her piggy bank tighter and whispered, "My mom cries at night when she thinks I'm asleep. She's been so lonely since Dad went to heaven. I thought, maybe if you can fix cars, you can fix her heart too." The mechanic's throat tightened. He had faced tough jobs before, engines that wouldn't start, transmissions that fell apart, but never had anyone asked him something so tender, so impossible. Yet looking at the hope shining in that child's eyes, he couldn't bring himself to dismiss her. He tried to smile. "Sweetheart, I don't know if I can fix something like that." But the little girl placed the piggy bank on his workbench with a determined thud. "I've been saving all my allowance. You can have it if you promise to try." Daniel stared at the small piggy bank, his hands trembling slightly. This wasn't about money. It was about a child's pure love for her mother and her desperate wish to see her happy again. Something inside Daniel shifted. He realized that maybe, just maybe, kindness didn't always need tools or wrenches. Sometimes it just needed a heart willing to try. At that moment he made a silent promise, not to the girl but to himself, that he would at least meet her mother. What he didn't know was that her innocent request would set in motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. Daniel couldn't shake the little girl's words from his mind. Fixing a broken heart. What could that even mean for a man like him? He wasn't a doctor, a counselor, or a magician. He was just a mechanic with grease under his nails and more bills than he could pay. Still, the look in her eyes and the piggy bank sitting on his workbench kept echoing in his thoughts. Finally, with a deep breath, he agreed to meet the girl's mother. The very next day, the shop door opened again. This time, the little girl returned, holding the hand of a woman who carried herself with quiet strength. She was graceful but tired, her eyes reflecting both warmth and sorrow. Her name was Claire. Daniel felt his usual confidence vanish. He wasn't prepared for how much her presence would affect him. "Hi," Claire said softly, offering a polite smile. "My daughter tells me you're the one she asked to fix me." Daniel chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, I usually fix engines. Hearts are a little outside my field, but I guess I can try by being a friend." Claire's laughter was quiet but genuine, the kind of sound that made the shop feel brighter. It had been so long since she had laughed like that. Even she seemed surprised by it. That single laugh sparked something Daniel hadn't felt in years, a warmth spreading in his chest, unexpected but welcome. Days turned into weeks. Daniel began inviting Claire and her daughter over to the shop after school. The little girl would sit on a stool, swinging her legs while watching Daniel work, while Claire would share stories about her late husband, about raising a daughter alone, and about the weight of loneliness that never quite lifted. Daniel listened more than he spoke, and in between tightening bolts and changing oil, he found himself repairing something else, her trust in happiness. Sometimes he'd crack jokes just to see her smile. Other times, he'd fix small things for her without charge, like the squeaky hinge on her front door or the lawnmower that refused to start. What started as kindness slowly blossomed into something deeper. One evening, after dinner at a local diner, Claire admitted softly, "You know, I haven't laughed this much in years." Daniel smiled, realizing that he hadn't either. It wasn't long before the entire town began to notice. The once lonely widow now carried herself with lightness again, and the once burdened mechanic seemed happier than he had ever been. The two lives, broken in different ways, had somehow found a way to fit together, like pieces of a puzzle waiting for the right moment. And at the center of it all was the little girl, whose innocent wish had set everything into motion. She no longer worried about her mother crying at night. Instead, she went to bed listening to the sound of laughter echoing through the house, knowing her family was whole again. Daniel often thought about the day she had walked into his garage with a piggy bank. He had believed he was the one doing the fixing, but in truth, it was her wish that had repaired him. Love had come into his life not with grand gestures, but with small moments, kindness, laughter, and the courage to let his heart open again. And as he held Claire's hand one evening, with the little girl beaming beside them, Daniel realized the truth. Her wish hadn't just healed her mother's heart, it had turned his whole world upside down in the most beautiful way.